All right. Can you guys see hear me at least, even if you can't see me?
Can you guys see hear me at least, even if you can't see me?
Doubling up. Why have I got the audio on? Let's cancel Twitch audio. Right. Oh, I've got the green screen down. Hang on, let me just fix the green screen down. You don't want to see my garage. Jeez. Let's continue the myth that this place is tidy. Right. See how tidy it is now? Will she end up telling Matt off? Who's going to tell Matt off? Zoomed in much. Yeah, I don't know why it's zoomed in like that. I can't control this camera. I've got to be honest. It's every time I look at it, it's doing something different. Oh dear. Right. So I've seen lots of people enjoying Sherman Hill, and frankly, I wanted to enjoy some myself. I also seen a number of people struggling a little bit, so I thought, hey, let's just do a stream, and if you've got questions, I can answer them, or we could just have a run. We'll do SD70, because what I want to do is an end-to-end run, essentially. Nice summer run. Let's make it nice and bright, but we will put a bit of cloud in there, and we want to go. Cheyenne. So I want to know if you guys got any tips on what's the heaviest consist you've found, because I've got no idea off the top of my head. I haven't actually gone through and tested them all to see how heavy they are. It won't be an automotive. There were some of the lightest trains. The coal ones generally aren't long enough to be heavy. Ethanol is going to be pretty heavy. Grain is going to be pretty heavy. Just looking at chat. Should the temperature not be Fahrenheit rather than centigrade? Oh, that's a good point. I'll get someone to check that actually. Make sure that's been set up correctly. You reckon grain, Michael? Alright. So let's do Laramie to Cheyenne on a grain. In which case, let's change the filter to just be grain. Laramie to Cheyenne grain. So an ethanol is about 14,000 tons, is it? So let's see what this one weighs out at. Superfruit sounds tasty. A superfruit is like a rail fan nickname for the service, as far as I understand. I don't know what the actual ticket, the name is. Right, what do we got here? Just under 14,000. We've got six locos. Street is doing okay, yeah, thank you. Right, this will do. This will do. 14,000 tons is challenging. So let's cut the brakes in. Operator controls, cut in lead, and we'll get the that there. Cut the power in. The lights on. Front lights on. Reverse it in and forward. Go. We're going to wait for this to charge up. So the key thing you're waiting when you want to get going is the front brake pipe is telling you literally what's happening at the brake pipe at the front of the train. This rear is the brake pipe at the back of the train. I don't know if you can see that. It says 1. So even though the brake pipe at the front is 33 and charging rapidly, at the rear of the train it's staying at 1. The reason for that is the air is going down in like a wave down the train, but it's not just pumping the brake pipe up. Because the train is starting from so what happens is if you change over engineers, so this, imagine in the storyline here, an engineer brought the train here and then left it. right? So they would have taken the reverser out, put it in handle off and everything else, which dumps the brakes. So you've now taken the train over. It's now recharging everything. So the aux reservoirs need charging on each wagon. The emergency reservoir will need charging on each wagon, and that's why you've got brake pressure at the front, and it's taking a while to see any at the back, because as it waves down the train, it's also charging all of those reservoirs up, 90 psi in each reservoir as it goes down the train. So you're waiting for the rear to come up to at least above sort of 65 psi. But there's a trick. If you leave when the train is at 65 psi, oh yes, I should set put the banking comm on now, shouldn't I? That's better. If you leave before your rear is at above 65 psi, even if the brakes have released, you might not be able to apply them again, because 65 psi is kind of the baseline for when the brakes, become viable. It causes the brakes to release, but there's no room in at that point to actually apply the brakes. Which means that if you're about to go downhill, so if you're doing one of the services that starts at Hermosa midway along the route, so if you're starting here, then if you're heading westbound towards Laramie, you're already on the gradient going downhill pretty much. And if you're heading eastbound, Summit is about here, and then you're downhill all the way to Cheyenne. If you leave at 65, then by here you will not have 90 psi in the rear of the train, I doubt it. And if you're heading westbound, then you're already in trouble. So you do not want to leave until you've got 90 psi on the whole of the train if you're going to be needing those brakes. Now, departing at Laramie and heading eastbound like this, it's all uphill, so you've got plenty of time to charge up to 90 psi. But you might have a problem if you need to stop midway along it. So even so, I would still probably recommend that you want to hold off until the rear is at a decent enough level that you've got brakes available if you need them, which isn't until you get to 70 plus. Restreambot is copying all of the chat from YouTube, Nathan, or Twitch, so that all of the YouTubers see the Twitch chat and all the Twitchers see the YouTube chat. Did you get to lower the camera for the driver's seat? It is being lowered. It's not made it out yet. At the moment, it's kind of up here somewhere. It's been lowered so that the viewpoint is more central on the window. There's not a lot we can do until the brake pressure comes up. You can't find this service on Last Gen Xbox. I don't know, LaserJet. It won't be at the same time. The timings will be different, LaserJet. On the previous timetable will be different to this one. So I would expect maybe 10-15 minutes earlier, maybe, timing-wise. Did I sort that problem last night? Which problem was that, Baked Bean Good? Well, no. Oh, yes. Literally just submitted the fix for that this morning, so that's for a different thing, folks. Don't worry. Not for Sherman. It's the next thing that's on fire. Liam, yeah, sorry, it's doing okay. So it's probably that one then, LaserJet. Yeah, the timings are all different because the trains are a lot faster on Gen 8 because they're a lot shorter. I'm not going to turn the alerter on. It'll just wind me up because I'll be focusing on chat and so forth. And we don't want to sit around for 10 minutes because I missed an alert. How are we doing? 60 psi. Who created all the physics for TS? No, it doesn't come from MSTS. It was created by Kuju. I don't know who in Kuju created the underlying physics system. Before my time, I'm afraid. But no, there isn't, as much as there is spiritual heritage between MSTS and Train Simulator, but it is it is different code. But some of the same people were involved in it, so ironically, it's got some of the same mistakes, some of the same ways of doing things. Nitrax in reality probably longer. A full recharge from full shutdown like this is probably about 25-30 minutes. I think was what someone was saying on the beta group. So if anything, this is a bit on the fast side. It's quite incredible, really. .62 on the rear, we're getting there. All the physics of Train Sim World have been written by a different team, actually. I don't think there's anyone from who did TS1's physics has been involved in this. It was originally developed by a lead engineer, but it's been significantly advanced since then. Asian, Sherman Hill is out, yes. 89 is the PSI on the front. So this is the equal. So the numbers. Let me just break down these numbers for you. Equalizing res, the one that says 90, is the target pressure for the brake pipe. That's what the equalizing res is there for. It's a very small reservoir that you can move really quickly. And the idea is this sets the target for the brake pipe because the brake pipe moves very slowly. The brake pipe is the actual brake pipe that runs all the way down the train. And this number here is the brake pipe locally at this vehicle. The one that says on the bottom here says rear is a number that's being transmitted by a radio from the rear train, and it tells me what the brake pipe pressure is at the rear. Flow doesn't work at the moment, but this would tell you what the flow rate is of air coming out of the lead loco. Main is the main reservoir. So what happens is you have a reservoir at a very high pressure, in this case 130 odd psi, and what happens is when you want to pump the brake pipe, it takes it from this high pressure main reservoir and lets it go into the brake pipe. So you can see that main is going down at the moment. Well, the air that pumps the brake pipe up, the air that you see down here raising up the rear, is what's coming from main here. And what you'll see is that'll go down to say 120 or so, and then it'll put the compressor on and it'll pump back up again, and it'll go, I think, up to 140 or so. In fact, there you go, the compressor's kicked in. You can see the number going back up again. So the compressor kicks in and then it uses it up a bit, and then the compressor kicks in and it uses it up a bit, and so on and so forth. So that's what the main reservoir is doing. And then BC is the brake cylinder. So 72 says I'm fully locked on the brakes, and that's because I've got the locomotive brake, the independent brake, fully applied at the moment. So regardless of anything else going on in the system, I'm holding the train with the 4 locos, each with their 6 axles of brakes, is being held at the moment, while I let the rest of the train's brakes come off. So yeah, rear is still at 63, so we've got a little bit of time. 64. So yeah, that's what those numbers are telling you. Is there ditch lights on the loco? Yeah, if you set it to bright AUX, which is this setting here, then on the front you've got ditch lights here. It doesn't have crossing lights, the ones that flash. That's really more of an eastern seaboard thing. The likes of Norfolk Southern, not Norfolk Southern, yeah, Norfolk Southern, CSX. They kind of do the flashing lights thing, whereas BNSF and Union Pacific generally don't. My frame rate is pretty poor, lad. I think I don't know quite why it's sitting here at 30, but then I'm using this PC for streaming, and I don't know what my settings are. Let's have a quick look. This is an old i7 6th generation. It's nothing too fancy. Oh, let's drop this screen percentage down a bit. I dare say we can live with it being a little bit lower. It's not really made any difference. Fair enough. I'll pump it back up then. I think basically my system is completely out of balance because it's got a 2080 and a relatively poor CPU. But at this point, I've got no plans to upgrade the PC. It's just too expensive. Screen percentage is make a bigger screen than you've got. So let's say, for example, you've got 1080p screen. If you set the screen percentage to 200%, then internally the game will create a 4K image and then squash it down to the 1080p. And the reason for doing that, because that seems immediately a bit wasteful, the reason for doing that is anti-aliasing. So all of these smooth edges here that you can see, which would normally be a little bit more jagged, because it's got more data to produce the anti-alias, but to figure out how to draw those more smoothly, it's the best form of anti-aliasing essentially. If you can overdraw the screen and drop it back down using screen percentage, because it's not making up the data, which is what the likes of TAA and FXAA and all of that lot do. They effectively try and guess the missing information to smooth out the jags. Whereas screen percentage creates the information, and then when it drops the resolution down, it can use all of the extra information because it's turning 4 pixels into 1. So it can be much more clear about all of the information that would affect the colour of that pixel. I mean, my old 980 Ti used to do 200%, Chief Engineer. I've got a 2080 Super on here now, but to be honest, I got that mostly because the opportunity came up rather than because it was necessarily a good upgrade for my system. Brakes aren't at 90 yet, they're still at 67. I'll probably try pulling off at 75. There is a bit of a wait, and there's no point rushing it. And if you're in bad weather, then all you're going to do is spin the wheels on the lead loco. Because what's the real situation right now is, as we look outside, yeah, so these brakes are all being held on by the locomotive brake. These brakes here are probably all off. At some point down the train, they're still on, and the brakes are releasing down the train as the air gets pumped up. So we're waiting for all the brakes to get released. .68 on the rear down here. The little one here. 69 now. If we look actually at the rear vehicle, probably this one. You can see 69 here. Let me just pump the brightness up a little bit on this. So you can see this is showing 69 PSI on the rear of the train, which confirms what we're seeing at the front. Actually, you can see the brakes look like they're off now. Certainly they're off on the locomotive, so we're probably able to pull away now. But I'm just going to give it a minute more just to get some more air in that pipe. No, there's nothing fast about American big heavy freight. Nothing fast at all. Laramie's got a couple of performance issues, but like I've said a few times, my machine is not the best, Chief Engineer, so I wouldn't base any FPS on this. I know some other people have reported FPS issues as well, but my machine is old. AC4400, shouldn't be. Where are you seeing an AC4400? Oh wow, there is. Well, there you go. Didn't realise that. I didn't even know substitution was set up to allow that. We're at 70 psi. 71, like I said, 75 will go. I'm not sure how I can explain it, Tyler. Obviously, substitution is set up. I just didn't appreciate it that it was set up. So. $71. Come on. Yeah, I've heard Leland, I've heard a number of people say that the texture glitching is still there, so I'm going to get a build running myself and go back to the engineering team and say, nope, not fixed yet. Keep going. Frame rate will come up as we come out of Laramie. We've done some work on the performance, and one of the areas we found is there's a particular asset that's used quite a lot that's incredibly inefficient. So that's being redone at the moment. $72. What's the weather like down here? It's just windy mostly. There was a little bit of wet, but not an awful lot. Otherwise than that, it's just windy and cold. I think all of the trains are limited to something like 40 or 50 on the Gen 8. Yes, Matt Nicholas. Certainly nothing longer than 50. I think a lot of them are more down towards the 40 area. Because beyond 40, the frame rate starts to tank on Gen 8. Because of the amount of simulgraph required to make that work is quite heavily dependent on CPU. $73. Couple more, and then we'll release brakes and go. Will DTG release assets to modders so the community can extend existing routes? But at the moment there's no tools to do that either, so I'm not sure what is it you feel that you need, because the problem is with extending routes is that they're cooked, and once an asset is cooked it can't be modified. No, okay, there might be unofficial hacky ways of doing it, but you know, that's for you to discover and use if you want to. But in terms of an official tool set, A, there isn't one, and B, even if there was one, you can't. Unreal, the way Unreal works is you can't edit something once it's cooked, because the process of cooking gets rid of a lot of the data that you need to be able to edit it. Isn't audio? I don't know who. I've not heard of Audio Shack, Kingstree. Maybe ping me a link to. But we did put out the request and nobody got in touch, so I assume they either don't have them or didn't want to share them, which is fine. Oh yeah, you can start the train at a lower previous side, but I want to make sure that it's got more time to pump up so that if I need the brakes, I've got them. When you say overall audio level, do you mean the game? Do you mean me? Oh, you mean Ryan? Ryan's on our beta team, so if he had sounds, I'm sure he would let us know. We did ask on the beta team first. Are you grumpy? I'm always grumpy, yes. Both, really. So I can pump up the game audio, but my microphone is at maximum. Why do PS4 have shortened HSTs and not the full-length HST like PC? Because it's a lesser of a piece of a computer, basically. It hasn't got the CPU. No, I mean, Ryan doesn't have SD70 ACE sounds. Potentially we're working with Ryan to get some recorded once we can get a place organised. We've got a couple of irons in the fire following some community feedback, but nothing's actually made it to a trip yet. Right, 75 psi. Let us send square brackets into XSplit. Hold on. There we go. Get the independent brake off. A couple of notches on the power. Hopefully we'll start seeing some forward motion. You'll sometimes get a bit of forward motion, then it'll seem like it's coming back, and that means the rear of the train hasn't released yet. But given that we're up to 2 miles an hour now, I'd say the back of the train's moving. Although the EOT move light hasn't come on yet. That might be because we've got an AC 4400 on the back, actually. It might not be sending the right message. It's part of the problem with mixing stock from different packs. You've either got to never upgrade anything and never change anything so that everything is the same, or you end up with incompatibilities, or you spend your life always upgrading old things and never getting, and that basically means you can't produce new stuff. What does the EOT light mean? So on the right hand side there's an EOT move. If you had an ST70 on the back, that would have lit up to tell you that the rear of the train was moving. It's quite a helpful indicator for when you're getting started. Why is it different locos front and rear? The rear loco is an AC 4400 because random substitution kicked in. Any tips to get going on this train, Nicholas? Basically follow the usual startup procedure that I've outlined on a number of streams now. I'm also going to write up a document for Nat to put up on the on Dovetail Live and on the forums. And then wait until you've got enough PSI on the rear, so I would say 75 or above, just to give you plenty of headroom. And if you're about to go downhill anytime soon, don't move until you've got full 90, otherwise you've got no brakes. Look, in this case I'm going to be going up a steep hill for the majority of this, for the first half of the journey, so I'm going to play a bit fast and loose to get going before 90. But if you think you're going to need those brakes anytime in the next 10-15 minutes, then don't move until you've got 90. Totally, Ethan. I'd love to see some Australian content, but it's the usual challenge with it. Different countries. Licenses would be one of them. There's a schedule for next week's Rail Fan TV not gone out, Scott. I'm not sure what it is, to be honest, at this point. Yeah, it'd be written down in a spreadsheet somewhere, probably. Is environmental lighting at night meant to be bright, or is this bug? So, what should it look like at night? Everyone has a different view. You've either got go for the realistic, which is black, pitch black, and you can't see anything. And everyone says, well, it's realistic, but it's no fun, so I'm not going to do it. Or go for more of a moonlight, which lights everything up a bit more. You can see what you're doing, and everyone says, but it's not dark enough. That's really a debate you can't win. Generally, we tend to go for moonlight because at least you can play it. Unless you've got a route like Dresden, which is lit up artificially quite significantly, in which case you can have you can afford to have the darker, if you see what I mean. Let's push the power up a bit. So some people have been looking into it about the moonlight is extremely bright. Okay, I'll have a look and see what we know what's going on. But I think that the lighting is the same on this route as it has been for others. One thing that does seem to be the case is the cab is really bright when you're inside it, but when you're outside, it sort of levels out a bit more, and it's to do with the eye adaptation thing in Unreal, which is great, but it really needs careful setup, and we're not there. It's not been set up the way it needs to be. It needs someone to actually put a lot of attention into how that looks and make it right. Schneckler, yeah, Novica Dresden is probably my favourite route in the game. Well, we're almost up to the limit. Oh, Dad, I'm on my PC, but my PC is old at this point. I'd normally be streaming on my work PC at work, which is a much, much newer, better machine. But my wife's got COVID, so I'm kind of locked at home at the moment. Let's have a look at that brake pipe. So it's only reached to 79 at the moment, so you get an idea of how much longer this thing would take. And until it gets to 90, you don't have full brakes. Scary, scary thought. Alright, it's run 8 now. She's fine, Min's bag. She's just sitting in there watching telly all day. It's basically, the symptoms are not too bad. It's basically a bad flu. I checked in on her before I started the stream, and she's happy. Well, as happy as can be, really. ST70's rail driver compatible, yes, Chief Engineer. Cab signalling is being worked on Friday, I think. Hopefully that'll be better. Sorry, can you hear me over the train? It's deafening me. Yeah, Poker Bro, and like I said, my machine is old. Right, well, there's not a lot to do here except sit and watch it, keep an eye on that brake pipe pressure as it comes up, so we make sure it all comes up correctly, which it should do, no reason why not. No, you can't share scenarios with other players yet, Steve. We have mentioned a while now that that's coming. Doesn't have any dates for it yet, but it is something being worked on. Well, we're both double vaccinated, Matt K, but being vaccinated doesn't stop you getting it. It just means that when you get it, it doesn't hit hard. Brake pipe pressure for the rear be added to the HUD? Possibly. Something to potentially look at. That is already quite busy. Is there a possibility for more locomotives to be in this route like DLC? Anything's possible. No plans. You'll see stuff in the roadmap, usual bingo card answer. When Sherman Hill was in the planning phase, was even remotely tempted to have a gas turbine loco in it. Never for release, but we all thought, as you know, all of the locos. The minute you say Sherman Hill, you start thinking about all the possible locos that can run on it, and thinking, yeah, one day, maybe. Where does it show you the status of the other trains? The only indicator you've got from the other trains is the rear brake pressure. I mean, in the real locos, you've got DPU control, but we don't have a simulation of DPU at this point, so none of that's there. We're using our banking com feature to remote control the other trains. It's 13 miles to Summit, well, 13 miles to Hermosa, which isn't far from Summit. Up to 0.8%. A manifest train coming down the grade. My poor computer. Should play it on the Series X, it'd be faster. No, I'm running shipping build. This is the public build, same one that you've got, GTA Sandman. We have lowered the camera, but it's not in this build. As if it was, you'd have it as well. Well, we had to put something in there for the reporting mark, because you can't not have a reporting mark. But reporting marks are technically copyright as well, so you can't just use them willy-nilly. Yeah, by default everything starts up in the right place, Matt K. So all you do is hit banking com on the front and the rear trains will just behave. AI trains follow startup procedures. No, AI drivers don't do the same stuff as the player. It doesn't have a full simulation. No, Horseshoe Curve is being modelled as a modern route. Yeah, there's some pretty awesome stuff potentially could run on this, isn't there? See, DDA40X and things like that they're great, but I like things like C30-7 appeals more to me, or the U50, things like that, just because they look a bit different. Moricon, Mrs. P is doing okay. It's flu-like symptoms, so she's managing it okay. I got her some painkillers and treats and so forth, and I made her a mocha earlier on, so she's sitting there watching The Bold and the Beautiful, I think, endlessly. It's just non-stop, The Bold and the Beautiful in the living room at the moment, so I can't be in there, not without losing my mind. Douglas Costa, why are the same locomotives repeated on new routes? Because locomotives are incredibly expensive to make, and so we can't always put a bunch of new locos in a route. Sometimes we can put one new one, like the SD70, and then repurpose an existing one, which is nothing. The Union Pacific SD40 wasn't free for us; it cost money to do, it cost time to do. But we need to balance that out. Otherwise, it needs to be. It needs to make sense for the product. Is that because I'm not bold? Are you saying I'm beautiful? Thank you, Captain Fleck. Oi, Scott. Oi, less of it. Maintaining 31, we're doing all right. 11 miles to go to the to Hermosa. A bit after that, probably another 3 or 4 miles to summit once we get past Hermosa, and then it's downhill time. Oh, we get all sorts of stuff over here, Calador. Yeah. I mean, my wife is American, so she likes the stuff. That cough sounds COVID-y. Well, so I'm taking another test probably later on actually, and we'll see. But last test I took Friday was fine. But it is a more persistent and unusual cough than I have had previously. But I don't have any other symptoms. So. SD7, I want to do all the SD70s. I like the M's, the Max, the Tier 4s. It's all good. Is this an Autorac train or another manifest? Probably an Autorac train. One and a half miles of train, that thing. Comes on and on and on. You can see it appearing in the distance even around this corner. Would an SD40 sub in on this train? I would hope not. Might not have enough horsepower to get up the hill if that happened. But no, each of the vehicles is set to have a minimum horsepower to substitute, which would eliminate anything but the 6 axles from showing up. It's the rear of a brake train looking like at the moment. 84 psi. See how long it's taking though. You can imagine if you started at Hermosa and you rocked off at 75 psi, that by the time 4 miles have gone, and we've driven more than 4 miles at this point, we would not have anywhere near enough brake power. Because if I did a minimum service application right now, I think I'd get nothing. Certainly on the back half of the train. Mariah's Pass would look lovely, wouldn't it, Wyatt? Yeah, totally agree. But Mariah's and Donna are two I'd like to see at some point. But then, one of the routes I've always wanted to see, which we can't do because of licensing complexities, is the Montana Rail Links, the Helena. The Helen's Pass, is it? I had a DVD of that one and it's just spectacular. I think the last time we put them up to review Feather River Canyon one out internally on that one. That's why we built Feather River Canyon on TS1. Why are the containers 100 when in real life they're 200? Well, we've only just got the trains to 100. You know, it's I don't know whether this iteration of train sim, I don't know how much more we can optimise. If we want to go more than 100, then we're probably looking at either waiting for people's CPUs to get significantly more powerful, or dumping the advanced physics and going with a simpler model for the longer trains. The slow speeds never appealed, Gareth. So what I always tell people, because I know I get this question a lot, is I'm not going very fast, I'm not really doing anything, we're going really slow. What's the fun in this? The fun in this is what happens in about 13 miles when we switch to the descent. The fun of American freight is the downhill run. That's where you sort the men from the boys, or the grown-ups from the kids. Because if you get that wrong, and it's very easy to get wrong, you don't understand how the brake systems work, you've got no hope. And even if you do, don't pay attention to what you're doing on that downhill slope, you can lose it. You know, it's if all you're used to is a British train or a European train where the brakes are basically always available, respond nice and quickly, and you can slow down lovely and fast, then you got a big surprise coming when you try and stop an American train or manage it down a hill, especially when you've got 100-car, 1.5 mile long trains. It's very, very different, and this is that's the crux of the what's exciting about the American trains for me. That's one way of putting it, maybe good. Should we expect the PS5 limitation fixed before the end of the year? We've been trying for that, but I don't know whether we'll make it. So I'm going to say don't expect it, and then allow us to surprise them. But I don't know. It's yeah, there is people working on it. We're going as fast as we can, but well, a hill start while you're uphill is a little bit challenging as well. Lunar visits, actually. Hill starts with these trains can be a challenge too. It's so easy to have a runaway train with this. I've done it a couple of times because I haven't allowed the brakes to properly charge, which is why I left a little bit longer, because we're still only at 85 psi on the rear of the train, so it is pumping up. We should be good by the time we get to Summit, but what will happen is if we get when we get to Hermosa, I'm going to back power and speed right off if we haven't reached 90 psi yet. Runaway you had on Clear Creek, yeah. Runaways on many trains. Is it taking longer because of the AC? Possibly, Liam, I don't know. Gone up to 86. Only needs to get to 90, so it's only got 4 psi to do. But you know, when you're pumping your tyres up, you know that it's easy to put the first 30 pounds in, and then it gets more and more difficult as you put more and more on. So it's natural that it slows down. No, my runaways have always been, what I've been trying to test. With the weight of the train, does it change when loaded from unloaded in weight and braking style? Oh yeah. And an unloaded train is significantly lighter. The other problem with the C70A is when you try to move it, goes to 0.5, then goes to 0 and wheel slips. You're not letting the brakes come off wire. It takes a good 10 minutes for the brakes to come off on the long trains. Thing to look for, Wyatt, is when you release the brakes, watch this value here under rear. Until that gets to about 75, I wouldn't even worry about trying to move the train. Just leave it sit there and to charge the brakes. Even though the front it's gone up to 90 quite quickly, it takes a while for all of the air to pump back down the train. So you want to wait until the rear brake pressure shows about 75 psi before you start pushing off. And if you're at the top of the hill at Hermosa, then don't move until it says 90. Leave it. No, I've not had anyone look into the disappearing cars yet, Brad. It'll be a visual thing. The weight won't change, but still need to figure out what's going on there. They're not. Basically, I presume that they're just not. They're despawning and not respawning when they reset. they're nice, aren't they? The coaching stock is really nice, Schleckly. Make a decent time up the grade. I think this is a fairly level 0.8%. The other, there are some trains, a limited number of them, that will take this side, and this goes up to 1.5%. It can be a bit more of a struggle. No, the weight shouldn't change when the car's managed. I think it's a visual effect, or visual defect rather. King Street, I'm not sure. I'll ask the team to find out what's going on there. Part of the problem, Nicholas, is once you lose it, you lose it. You've got to not lose it. As strange as that sounds. No, I'm only exec producer on TSW, Nick. 5.8 miles. Yeah, and the billboard grass has got the wrong colour on it. Oh, hello. Chewing over something. Yeah, so you see the grass changing colour that's on the our team's list to fix. There isn't an exec producer on TS1. Oh, 87 PSI on the rear now. The SD40 has no visible light. Raise bug, or DM me on the forums and I'll take a look. Yeah, not sure what that stutter was all about. Raise a support ticket on that one for me, Tom's on. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. I've not seen anybody else reporting that. Maybe an issue with your profile, perhaps. Right, 5 miles to Mimosa. 87 on the rear. No, I said that there was originally specified to be a different icon on Go Buyer, but it didn't make it into the game. So all you're seeing is what's intended in the game, but not what's intended from the design. Is there a point where it's inevitable that you can't recover? You might as well start a new run, potentially, Calador. I think you should be alright on this one. And you might have to dump all the brakes into an emergency. Certainly when I lost control of this one in one of my tests, the emergency recovered it. It took a while, but I did eventually get it down to stopped. And then I had to recharge everything and get it back up going again. But I don't know about Clinchfield. I've not really had any problem with Clinchfield, if I'm honest. So I don't know how recoverable that is, but it's heavy trains with not heavy locos, so you might be in a bit more of trouble on that one. Why in Sandpatch Grade the container the whole cars are empty? Because Sandpatch Grade they were empty because the performance with the cars wasn't working back then, but we fixed that since then and just haven't gone back to Sandpatch Grade to update the containers, the Autoracks. Shortly, Wesley, hopefully next week, early next week. I don't have an exact date on the Bell update going and all the other updates going on to Epic Games, but it's very shortly. We've got 7 platforms to update, so we use Steam as a bit of a guinea pig because we can cycle it the fastest, and we've confirmed those fixes are good, so I know that the build engineers are lining up those builds for all the other platforms. Seems to be issues with Dovetail Live. Okay. That's just a shame. Going on the hill, how do you use the dynamic and automatic? Well, I'm going to be doing that shortly. We're not too far from Summit now. Nicholas, so the only safety system that works reliably at the moment is the alerter, which is just as it beeps, acknowledge it. Cab signalling isn't working. You can see it's blank at the minute, and it should be showing some sort of adverse aspect. That's been worked on, and I'm hoping that'll come out. Once that comes out, essentially all it is as an advance indication of what signal is upcoming. It's kind of giving you the HUD indicator, except that it's really the next signal's indication, or previous signal's indication, rather than the next one. The way that cab signalling works in America is the signal is transmitted down the rails. So if you can imagine, you've got a signal here, and a signal here. The signal goes down the rails, and this signal reads it and regards it as the next one up. So this one is yellow, this one is green. As you go past it, your train takes the signal essentially. Yeah, your train is in front of it, and so it takes the electrical signals, the impulses on the track, and then it can read them and put them on the cab. So you're seeing what the previous signal would have been showing if you weren't there, essentially. The way I'd like to visualize it is, as you're driving down the track, as you go past the signal, you reach your arm out, grab it and pull it in the cab, and then you're able to see what it would have been at that point all the time. So it's not strictly the next signal. It's kind of what the one was before you if you weren't there, but if the next signal aspect changes, you will see that in the cab as well. It's live. The one at the bottom, half yellow, half red, is restricting. Yeah. Speedometer at the second man seat and speedometer at the driver's screen aren't aligned. Are they not? They're not showing the same thing? It's probably a rounding error or something stupid. Right, that's an advanced approach because of the when we get to Hermosa, I'm actually going to dial back the power a little bit here. Yeah, you see it's picked up an impulse, but it's misinterpreted it. Let's drop it back to notch 6, slow down a bit. Yeah, that advanced approach is because of the change in, we're going to switching over to the right-hand track. No, there's 4 at the front, 2 at the rear on this one, Turnip. Why would you need to know what aspect the previous signal is after you've passed it? Well, but that's how it works. But what it does is it allows you to infer what the next signal is. It's kind of a reminder of what that aspect is, so that it still tells you what the next one is implicitly. Implicitly you can still figure out what the next one is from that, but because of the way the system works, you are picking up the impulse the previous one does. No, the cab signalling's not working, Tyler Sargent. Banking com is for controlling remote locos, so you don't need banking com for locos that are lashed together. The normal multiple unit system will work with that, and that's automatic. For banking com, it's for controlling locos that are not lashed to you, so they're at the back of the train or the middle of the train or something like that. So if you turn banking com on, then the other trains at the rear will react to your controls. So otherwise they won't do anything, they won't contribute any power, they're dead weight. So that's the difference. Keenan, what's the point of having banking com on? Essentially, this is track 3 coming up here on the right hand side, by the way. That's actually a tough 1.5% grade coming up there, that's hard work. Yeah, so if you're finding it difficult to get up a grade without banking com on, then put banking com on, and the rear loco should then come into life and be contributing power. Otherwise it won't contribute power, it is just a dead weight. Just sit there idling. If the next signal goes red, well, the next signal is never going to go down in aspect, Gareth, or at least highly unlikely to go down. Whereas if it suddenly went up, let's say it was red and the obstacle cleared, and when it went to yellow, then your yellow would promote to a green. What routes do I personally prefer? I like a mix. I like shunting. I like commuter type passenger. I'm less interested in express passenger. I like the big heavy freight purely for the downhill runs, because it's a challenge to maintain. Got 88 psi now in the back. Plenty of brakes on. Brakes to our command now, which is good. I'm just backing off on the power to give it a little bit more time. Yeah, I think it's restricting because it doesn't understand it. I'm not quite sure what's happened there, but the signalling team and the loco setup team have not been talking to each other as well as they should do in terms of the aspects that are being used on the route and the aspects that are interpreted by the onboard system. I know they were talking a lot on Friday, and I think they fixed it, but I've not seen the fix yet. You need to put banking com on before moving the reverser forward so the rear locos follow. Yes, I think so. mph coming up, yes. Let me just slow down for that. Joining up. Working distance count. I'm surprised that's not in here, to be honest, because it's in the AC4400. So I will talk to the team and find out if there's a reason it got left out. Is this route populated with trains? Yeah, there's about 70 services in total running up and down the line. I'm the same, Schleckley. It's got to have PZB. I'm not worried about LZB. And, you need it for the fast trains, but PZB is what makes the German routes for me. Under 15, so put on a little power, try and balance out. It's just about balanced out. If anything, we're accelerating very slightly, judging by the bubble. imagine PCB mode U in this train. It'd be so much faster. What does AFB do on German trains, Tyler? It's effectively cruise control. Automatic Fahren and Bremsen, so automatic go and stop. I don't know. It's essentially you set a target speed with AFB, and then it will do the power accordingly to speed up, slow down. Generally, you want to treat it as a speed limiter. It's still up to you as the driver to make sure you don't break speed limits and so on and so forth. But it's that's what it's doing essentially. Diverging clear. Remember your indicators. Doing a tutorial American signal aspects. I will at some point, yes. I haven't forgotten it. But it takes a bit of planning and I'm kind of busy. But no, I haven't forgotten. Why does the speed on the HUD not always match the speed on the cab? It's a rounding error. I think one of them is rounding 14.5 up to 15, and one of them is always flooring it, so 14.5 would equal 14. I think it's something silly like that. Hermosa Tunnel. The loco brakes. No thanks, baked bean kid. Yeah, like at the moment it says 15 and that says 14. Yeah, I think this is rounding up and this is rounding down. Why does the Cane Creek AC4400 not substitute? It is. It's coming in certain loco positions, just not in the driving position. Yeah, my machine is old due to fun. This is my own computer at home. I haven't updated it in many years. I've added a new graphics card to it, but the CPU is it's an old i7 6th generation. No, it's running Windows 10, but Yeah, they're not supposed to be that close to red signal aspects. I've seen some complaint from people. Some of the scenarios are way too close, so I need to go and re-advise the team. No, it won't handle Windows 11 Morricone. It's at least 2 generations of CPU older, and I don't think the motherboard can handle it either. It doesn't by any means meet the min-spec for Win 11. We need to double check the compatibility of the 4400 in terms of braking systems and so forth. SoCal, so it's something we're going to do at some point, and then if it works, we'll enable it. Well, we hear dynamic brakes shortly, Sierra. Right, it's actually on a downhill run now, although we haven't reached summit. It's just like there's a brief downhill bit after Hermosa Tunnel, and then we get back on the climb again to summit. We're at 89 now. Yeah, back. We're fully pumped up pretty much now. But they don't sell Windows 11, they're Caledon. That's the trick. Dynamic brakes themselves don't make sound, the whole system does, because it kicks in the big fans on the top. These big fans here are dynamic brakes. So when you kick in dynamic fans, they spin up and they make a lot of noise. I've looked at upgrading this thing, and it's almost cheaper to buy a new PC, to be honest, other than the GPU. But I'm putting son through university, so upgrading my PC is not a priority. Oh, the Dynamics is the back one, is it? Oh, okay. Speed limit. We could put a bit of power on, take advantage of the downhill a bit. This one's a Peterbilt, yeah, and it's a chill blast. Very happy with it, to be honest. It's done really well. It's struggling a bit with some of the newer stuff, but mostly gaming on my Series X these days, so I just don't have Sherman Hill installed on my Series X yet, or I'd probably be using that right now. See how fast the train's accelerating, and that's just gravity, because we've got 14,000 tons now pushing down. You just had your booster Caledon. Nice. Alright, given the way the speed is increasing, thanks to 14,000 tons of weight, I'm going to kick the dynamics in. Manage the speed a little bit here. Hear the fans spinning up. Just basically dial up the dynamics to get the bubble back in the middle. Dale Junction. Yeah, and I spent a lot of time making PCs, many years for an internet service provider, both for customers and for our internal use on servers. We custom built all of our servers, and it was fine. And what I realised is I didn't want to do that at my home time. My home time was more important to me than spending time fixing stuff. The EOT covered switch here. This flips the emergency brake release valve on the rear of the end of train. So if you need to stop in a hurry, you slam the front of the train into emergency and then flick the switch here, and that will vent the brakes from the front and the back, and you'll stop a lot faster. So we're now level, so I'm going to dial back the dynamic brakes. Keep an eye on the speed because we've probably still got 10,000 tonnes going downhill. I'm not using the accelerometer on the loco, yeah, and I must admit I'm using the one on the HUD because that's pretty much instant. Now we're starting to build up, we're getting on for the run to Summit now. So I'm going to take the dynamics off. We're just going to accelerate because some of the train is still coming down the descent we were just on. Just keep an eye on the speed, and we'll start applying power when we need to. But I don't want to be racing to the summit. I don't know why they made the windows open as a pair rather than individually, if I'm honest. I will ask them, see if there was a reason for that. Because, yeah, normally it's individual, isn't it? Does that only work if you have a DPU? No, because if you don't have a DPU, you've got this little thing called an end-of-train device, which is like a silver unit, which is put on it's attached to the rear coupling and attached onto the brake pipe, and it will give you the rear brake pressure, and it also acts as the EOT release, emergency release as well. Right, we're starting to see down deceleration now generally, so I'm going to dial in some power. So if we look on the map, Summit is here. Yeah, where the track gets wider than normal, that's where Summit is. So we're not far from Summit, so keep a general eye on things. Square indentation on the dash, I've got no idea. Will the GP38 from Peninsula Corridor ever substitute for shunting yards or an SD40? So you know what? I really, one of the things we originally talked about was actually putting the Peninsula GP38 in the pack. And we were strongly advised that the GP38 was a total irrelevant to this route, and be worse off putting it in than not putting it in from an accuracy perspective. So that's why it's not there and not used in any substitution. If anyone's got counter evidence to that, then I'm interested to hear it, but that's the reason it's like that. Because the SD40 is used for switching now, not the GP38. Hey there, Chris, how's it going? put a bit of power on. We need to get a bit of speed. We'll never get there otherwise. Hey Hentis, how's it going? Atari joystick holder, nice. More power on. Yeah, B units and slugs and the like are they're interesting, aren't they, Chief Engineer? They provide a bit of a different power visuals. I especially like the DD30 B units. Massive great things, and they're just a B unit. Yep, the little red flags along the side of the collectibles, they're fossils. Yeah, not doing too bad, Chris, but my wife is suffering with COVID at the moment, so she's doing alright, but suffering with the flu-like symptoms. Watching The Bold and the Beautiful for hours and hours and hours on telly. Not sure whether that's worse, to be honest. Wouldn't B units decrease GPU load as cabs are not included? Not really, because none of the trains behind me are pretty much loaded to any level of detail while I'm sitting in the cab looking forward like this. So far, no tracks, yep. Will there be more European routes? Yes, I'm sure there will be. What are they? Can't say. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, she's doing all right. Ollie isn't showing any signs of COVID. He just did a test this morning, and I've got I'm going to do a test this evening. But for the time being, I'm going to be working at home now anyway. Self-isolating, just to be on the safe side. Don't want to pass it around the office. Because I'm coughing more than normal, which is a little bit suspicious. Hey Alan, how's it going? Do the tests ever get easier? No, Gareth, they really don't. Don't you have to isolate anyway? I think so. I can't remember. I'm isolating because I can't remember what the rules are these days. Play it safe. Masks on. Isolate. Don't go out unless you have to. All the usual stuff. Yeah, I'm double jumped. So excited. Can't wait for the downhill runaway. Thank you, lad. Thank you. Not far from Summit now. Well, exactly. That's the thing. I can work from home quite happily. I need on Monday to get someone to send home some stuff like my actual work PC, because my laptop's okay, but all my work is on my work PC now. Yeah, you can see something now. Yeah, not quite, but you can see where the grade is changing. So not far from summit. Need to start watching what we're doing now. Yeah, I'm not going to get my invite for my third jab for a while, yeah. But I'll go grab that as soon as I can. Right, so the dynamic brake on this loco, and I need to just double check with the team about authenticity and so on and so forth, but the dynamic brake on this loco will shut off if the locomotive brakes are applied. Now, the automatic brake will apply locomotive brakes because it applies it across the entire of the train. So don't think, well, I haven't applied the loco brakes using the loco brake lever, because the auto brake applies loco brakes as well. If you apply loco brakes, it will cut out the dynamic brakes to avoid wheel slide, because wheels will easily lock up if you apply both, which is not good. There you go. You can see we're on the way down now. Although probably 10,000 tons still going uphill, so just ease up the power and watch the and keep on the right side of it. Don't, when you transition to downhill, this is probably one of the most dangerous bits, because if you're not watching it and you let it get too fast, you've then got to correct a too fast train, which is much easier than correcting a too slow train. Yeah, err on the side of too slow, at least until you get the hang of it, because dynamic brakes become less effective at higher speeds, not more effective. Yeah, they're not effective at slow speed, so it's like a triangle. Yeah, I can't remember what the optimal speed is, but as you go faster from 0, they get more and more effective, but then after a certain point they become less effective again. So correcting a train that's going too fast is harder than correcting a train that's going too slow, because you can always put less brake on, but you can't always put more brake on. Stack train there, Gunderson Husky stacks. Yeah, 20 to 30 sounds about right. I love it when you come round an S-bend and you can see the train winding round it. Right, see the speed starting to pick up now, so I'm going to dial the power back a bit more. In fact, let's cut the power completely. Remember, your dynamics have got a 10-second spin up. They're not going to be available instantly. So as more and more of the train transitions to the downhill, so you'll find the train accelerating on its own. So you need to start off with kicking the dynamic brakes in to even that out. So I usually just put it on a first step until you start seeing response. You'll see the pounds force go up one. And then just dial up some dynamics to try and balance out your speed. And then rather than letting the train get fast, you measure what your force is by just how much dynamic brake you're applying. So you find you're accelerating, so you apply a bit more dynamic brake. That's about the middle still, we're doing alright. If anything, it's slowing down, but that'll change. I don't know, Hentis, potentially. I think the idea, the goal is to try and bring the wide variety of containers to all routes over time. So we're accelerating again, so I'm dialing up the dynamics. Is there any way to know when the train's centre of gravity have shifted? So what I did just there was I cut the power when I thought I was probably close-ish, but on the wrong side of it, and I could see the train decelerating slowly. and then watch for the train to start accelerating slowly, and that's where you've crested the midway point. Just reasonably holding at the moment. Actually, we're slowing down a bit. Dial it down just a little. Remember, the goal is not, the speed limit is not your target. The speed limit is just a limit. Don't go crazy and start thinking, my goal is to get to 35 miles an hour at this point. It really isn't. Your goal is to maintain control of the train. As you get more confident, then you can try it, but remember, as you go faster, you might get less dynamics brake support than you're expecting. We're also only on the 0.8%, and on this side of the hill on track 1 and 2 we are going to hit 1.5%. So don't get overconfident with the 0.8% and think actually we can afford to run it fast, we're maintaining control nicely, and then the cliff vanishes and you're like, oh no, no. Dial it back though, because we do seem to be slowing down, so keep an eye on the accelerometer and let the train speed up a little bit. What we're hauling, grain. We have 14,000 tons, 1.2 miles, 106 or 100 cars in the train. Yeah, for 14,000 tons of grain. It's accelerating very slowly. Very slowly. That's what you want. Don't want any fast changes. Yeah, the AI are crazy, frankly. So we're on the downhill run now. 29 miles of downhill run from Summit down to Cheyenne. We're speeding up still very slowly, which is good. At this point we haven't got any air brakes running whatsoever. We're holding it on a middle dynamic brake setting, which is perfectly comfortable. Indeed, Chris, it's no rush. American freight is not about high speed, it's about safely getting to your destination. So during steam era, lad, what they would do is they would apply handbrakes on some of the wagons or on some of the freight cars, pull against the handbrakes on the levels and the uphills. In fact, what they do is they'd stop at the summit, apply handbrakes, and then it would roll down so that you would be effectively, you'd have brakes applied on somewhere like every fourth wagon, for example. They used to do it over here as well in the UK if you were running unfitted stock down a steep hill. There's actually a point, if you look it up on the Highworth branch, there was a sign which actually said stop and set handbrakes. All trains had to stop, chuck the handbrakes and set them according to their weight, and then they would fall down the hill, essentially under a controlled fall down the hill. think by going slowly, Chief Engineer, you minimise the heat, but I don't know the detail of it. Engines were certainly less powerful, trains were smaller, and expectations of doing any kind of speed were a bit more tempered, I think. Well, remember the Americans were one of the first to bring in air brakes. I mean, we still had vacuum brakes for a long time, so I think the Americans went for full brake trains quite early on. I mean, the early American steam engines didn't even have brakes in the loco. They used to put the throttle in reverse. If you've ever had a look at why can't I remember? Smokebox, Mike Rennie's trains on TS1. He's got some fascinating stuff on there with the older locos, and they've got no brakes at all on the train. It's all done by handbrakes. So they would, you'd use the engineer would blow the whistle, which would instruct the guard to put the guard in the caboose and so forth to apply handbrakes, and that's how they stopped the train. Dynamic brakes shouldn't use any fuel. No, I don't think dynamic brakes. Don't think they would use fuel. No, because they're generating power, and that power is being turned into heat. What I don't know is whether they use the power to drive the fans, or whether the fans are driven from the internal engine or the battery or something. Well, it makes sense to drive it from all the energy you're generating. I will let Skyhook talk about their horseshoe curve route when they're ready to retire, to be honest. I don't want to steal any of their thunder. Letting the speed build up a little bit as we carry on down. I don't think we're going to get into a real challenge until we get to the 1.5%. There's safety systems. So there's an alerter, and that's about it really. A cab signalling is there to tell you what's going on up ahead, but the alerter is really there to make sure you're awake. They have PTC these days on the trains. I don't know how that works for these, but that would be more speed-based control. I think Union Pacific's network is all fully PTC now. Yeah, the grass is going to have a pass, Callum. There's already been one pass because it was worse before release, but it's clear there needs to be another pass. So if you drop your foliage setting down to medium, it will free up some frame rate. CSX SD70 ACE. The problem is it's never just a reskin. If we were to do a CSX SD70 ACE, it would have to be, based on how they actually set their trains up. This is built to be a Union Pacific one. CSXs won't have this cab signalling system in there, for example, and there'll be other differences, so we need to check that out. And I don't know whether they've got first gen SD70 ACEs or whether they are all T4s or second gens. Second gens have got on the exterior here. They've got like welding and bolts for extra cab insulation, for example. There's a few other changes on the second gen ACEs. So it's just one of those things. It's all I say is it's never a reskin. It's one thing for you guys to use the livery editor to paint it CSX and say, hey, that looks great, and that is cool to see. But the different expectations when we put out a CSX one are that it is based on an actual CSX one. So at this point, I would say no, there are no plans for that. Vamsi, this is an i7 6th generation with a 2080 graphics card. %, right, the gradient is rising. Let's kick some more dynamics in. So we've just transitioned to 1.5% gradient. So I'm going to watch the speed as I dial up the dynamic brakes. And then at some point I'll kick an air brake in on a minimum set. Staying ahead of it so far. Callum, we get all sorts of different feedback from people. Some people want the cab to be a lot quieter than maybe reality because it's just such a horrible droning noise. And some people want it to be louder like reality, and other people can't agree what reality is. So we tend to aim for, with the windows closed, a more quiet experience. Windows open gives you the louder experience then, so that you can kind of choose how you want it to be. But it's a fine balance. We haven't really found it yet. Gradually increasing the amount of dynamic brake that we're applying as more and more of the train transitions into the 1.5%. There's been several trains we've gone past so far, Vamsi. I think we've had 4, I think, so far. There's a manifest, an auto rack, container train. Can't remember what else there was. Yeah, I think we've had 3 or 4 so far. You can see the accelerometer nudging up. 70,000 pounds of force. Any plans for tools to create train consists for off the rails mode? Not yet. Well, I say not yet. We've talked about it a lot, but it's difficult because of what I call stupid technical reasons. It's not necessarily difficult to make a consist editor. It's difficult to make one that works in all cases and with the way consists work in the game. How do you use the automatic brake and the dynamic brake? So when you apply the automatic brake, make sure you bail off the locomotive brakes. I'll be doing that in a minute, actually. Any minute now, I should think. Because we're at £67,000 of dynamics on notch 7 and still speeding up. So So what I'm going to do now is apply minimum set on the automatic, on the air brakes. And what you'll see is that as the BC value here has gone up, yeah, the dynamic brakes have cut. And if I bail them off and the BC goes back to 0, you'll see the dynamic brakes come back into play again. Bailing off is just holding this in the bail off position, so square bracket left. So dynamic brakes are back in play. Air brakes are now applying throughout the train. But now what you need to do is wait, because the air brakes are going to apply more and more and more throughout the train. And what I now need to do is watch the accelerometer and dial back the dynamic brakes to keep my speed level as the brakes apply throughout the length of the train. Otherwise you'll find with a combination of the dynamic brakes plus ever increasing brakes throughout the length of the train, you will eventually stop, or you'll go too slow. Looking good there, Sepsis. That's good performance. So again, we're on the decelerating side, so I'm just going to peel back the dynamic brakes a bit more. Actually, I'm going to peel them a fair bit more because we're slowing down now. We can afford to dial back a bit and let the train speed up. Poor house, you had to check again to see if this was really live. Yeah. Well, no, to be honest, I've been all over the forums the last couple of days, and I've seen a lot of people talking about Sherman Hill, which is really good, and some of the challenges people have been having. And I just thought, you know what, I fancy playing it as well. And if I'm going to play it, I might as well play it on stream and talk to people and answer questions and show things. And so that's what I'm doing. I checked it with the community team, and they were like, yeah, sure, go for it. Now we're back up to 25. I'm just going to ease the dynamics back on again, just to make sure we retain control of the speed. But you can see from the fact that the brake pipe is at 85 that all of the train has now got, and the rear is at 85, the entire train has now got a minimum set of brakes applied. And I'm now balancing the speed with the dynamic brakes, so I can speed up and slow down just by putting less dynamic brakes on or more dynamic brakes on. So I'm still fully in control of the train. Community being Nat, well, Nat and JD actually. JD's supposed to be on holiday, but he replied, so he got Nat chastised him for not logging off. That's funny. Bit more dynamics. Got here, grain. Looks like, oh no, is that an ethanol train? That looks like an ethanol train coming the other way. Guess we'll find out in a minute. Yeah, it's an ethanol train. That's probably a good 14,000 tons going that way. Got control of the train. We're now slowing down just a little bit. 20 miles to go, most of which will be at this 1.5% grade. Why do ethanol trains have grain hoppers at each end? They're barrier wagons. And I guess it's to keep the ethanol away from the loco. It's interesting, when we first applied the air brakes, we were thinking, you know, it was time to apply the air brakes when I was at 67,000 pounds of dynamic brakes. And here we are with the air brakes and 67,000 pounds of dynamic brakes. It just shows you how the how much braking power was actually needed. No, that's a unit train, and the barrier wagons are part of the unit train consist. Yeah, those covered hoppers are typically filled with sand to buffer and avoid fires and explosions. There you go. I'm going to dial back the dynamic brakes because we're slowing down a bit too much now. J4V, yes, it has a variant of the Class 66 sounds. Fundamentally, an ST70 ACE and a Class 66 share and essentially the same engine. One's a 16-cylinder version, the other one's a 12-cylinder version, but they're actually the same engine type. And you'll find that an ST70 ACE does do the ying thing though, like the Class 66s. But we weren't able to actually get to an ST70 ACE to do recordings, so this is the kind of the halfway house. We've got someone here queued up waiting to go. Stuck behind that slow ethanol train. Poor so-and-so's had to stop on a 1.5% gradient. Ooh, I'll be having words with the dispatcher. This must be granite. Yep, this is granite. Is this a manifest or an auto-rack? Accelerating a little bit now. How often will the new Sherman Hill loco substitute an SPG? I'm not sure. We've not looked. We haven't consciously gone back to some patch grade to review its substitution. So whatever's happening is just whatever fits with the previous settings. fast side, so I'm just going to dial in some power. I don't want to find myself on the wrong end of the dynamic brake curve and need to put air brakes on to slow the train down, because that then makes life awkward. Is he rolling? Yep, it's going. Yes, it is intentional that the AC4400 doesn't sub in at the moment, because we need to review it to make sure it's not going to cause any problems as a drivable loco. Union Pacific, what platform are you on? The Broken Bell is fixed on PC, but it's still broken on all the other platforms. We've got a fix coming on the other platforms, hopefully very shortly. We delivered it on Steam already because we can do uploads to Steam very quickly. But it is coming on the other platforms. Oh, Series X, yeah, it'll be coming soon. How are we doing? Slowing down very slowly. Just gonna ease back the dynamics a bit. Well, when I was at 32 miles an hour, I could see that the amount of force I was getting wasn't what I was getting earlier, and I'm thinking, hang on, I need to make sure that I can. You need to slow the train down. I might need upwards of 60,000 pounds, so I want to make sure that I can do that. So that was why I brought the train back under 30. Hey, Moggy. I need to read up actually on what the where the curve is and what the actual the optimum peak is for the dynamics. Each car is modelled entirely separately, Adam. So we have this thing called Simulgraph, and each wagon, each freight car, each loco has its own Simulgraph that's running, and you'll find that it models all of the airflow up and down, all of the reservoirs. Every entity on every vehicle is independently being simulated, which is one of the reasons that 100 freight cars is a challenge on the CPU. So there are 100 aux reservoirs, 100 quick release reservoirs, 100 elements of the brake pipe, 200 angle cogs, dynamic brakes seem more effective on PC. Do you need to stay under 30 miles per hour? So there is a peak optimal efficiency for the dynamic brake, and once you get above the speed of its optimum speed, then the brake's dynamics become less effective. It's a triangle. At 0, okay, the screen's mirrored, but at 0 here, you've obviously got no effectivity. You can't stop a train on dynamics, but as you speed up, so they become more effective up to a point, and then they become less effective as you go down the other side again, and you keep speeding up. So that's why you don't want to let the train get too fast, or you'll find that you can't use the dynamics to recover it. You'll need to then use more air. Yeah, I've got the... Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm talking to Richard. So we're actually possibly... I don't know whether I've let this get a bit too fast, because the dynamics, I'm not sure it's holding it now. It's just holding it at 33. So yeah, I've let that get a little too fast. It's physics, Cameron. I don't know the details other than physics. So yeah, we're now running on maximum dynamic brakes, so I no longer have the ability to slow the train down. But thankfully it doesn't seem to be speeding up. Although the force level seems to be dropping, which implies we're speeding slowly. You find that this 1,000 pounds of force, you can see that as the train speeds up, that will go down, which means we're getting less contribution from the dynamics. But I've got a minimum set across the entire train air brakes, and I always have the option to dial that up a bit. But once the grade levels out, it'll slow down on its own. Yeah, we're speeding up. We're speeding up. What does the attendant call button do? I don't actually have a clue. Gotta be honest. Yeah, you can see we're down to 60,000 pounds of force, so as the train speeds up, we're getting less contribution from the dynamics, which means we'll actually speed up more. I'm not worried. I've still got the entirety of the automatic brakes to play with, so we're nowhere near the limit of braking, and we've got tons of capacity for the speed limit. So. If I ease up the automatic brake a little bit, go up to 18%. Now you'll notice again that the brake cylinder's reapplied. So if I now bail off again, brake cylinder will come off and the dynamic brakes will then reapply. I'm going to have to wait a bit for that to change before we start worrying about anything else. Remember, a little bit, make a change, wait for that change to take effect, don't panic. Yeah, we're slowing down now. Very slowly we're slowing down. And you'll see also the other evidence we're slowing down is that will pop up in a minute to 59. So we just gained a bit more dynamic brake. More and more and more of the train is applying that can see the rear brake pressure is now dropping down to the 81, so the whole train isn't applying this level of brake force yet. So you want to change the horns? Why do you want to change the horns? Can you explain the autodynamics you dare to have autodynamic working together? Yeah, so when I applied the automatic brake, it will automatically apply. Automatic brake applies to every axle on the train, including the locomotives. So when you apply that, you'll see this brake cylinder value start to go up. If there's anything applied on the brake cylinder, then the dynamics will cut out and you'll lose them. Whereas what you want to do is bail off the loco brakes. So it's that button in the bail off position, or press and hold square bracket, which will do the same thing. Once you've bailed off the loco brakes and you see the brake cylinder at 0 or near 0, you'll find the dynamic brakes then just spring back into life. You don't have to do anything like reset them or anything, they'll just come back. Right, our speed is back down to 31. We're delivering 66,000 pounds of force on the dynamics again, so we're doing all right. The rear of the train is showing still 83, so it's still applying down the length of the train. So I'm going to dial back the dynamic brakes at this point a little bit. We no longer need 60,000 pounds of brake force on the dynamics to hold it, because we've got more brake force on the friction brakes. Hey there, Woody. Try and get it to run around the 30-mile-an-hour limit. We keep the dynamics at their most peak efficiency. Ed, since you're here, can you find out for me what the peak efficiency of the dynamics brakes are? Is it 30? Where are we going? Cheyenne, Christoph. Truck trailers, I'd like to bring in at some point Union Pacific. No doubt they'll make appearance. Whether or not they're UPS or FedEx, I wouldn't guarantee. There's licensing problems, but truck trailers I'd certainly like to appear in the game at some point. Going to the obscure little town as indicated, yes. So as you can see, you know, it's very easy to get yourself into a situation where you need to correct it and take action. And if I hadn't have corrected that, then I could have had more problems later on that might have been more difficult to resolve, and may, to be honest, have resulted in just needing to dump the brakes and come to a stop. Out of memory issues on Sherman Hill. Where are they, Salty Chip? Is there a forum on the a thread on the forum for it? So when people say to me, like I said, what's the fun of big American freight trains? Going downhill. Going downhill. The biggest reason they don't get named, Gareth, is because they can be, The reason they don't get named is last-minute changes that then would require localization. As indicated is always localized because it's a bit of core text. Whereas if we want to, go to Laramie track 5, that would need localizing. And we try and get that done, but then if we need to make changes, then it just has to be as indicated. Get them to post a thread with what they're doing to cause the crashes, and I'll get someone to look into it, Salty Chip. There's no point in them complaining to themselves. I need them to get a thread on the forum, so with repro steps, and I can get someone to look into it. I think someone said something about the Series S crashing on the sandbox switching. But I'm not aware of anything else. Will we get graffiti on wagons? We've done it in some cases, Richard. We do an unbranded wagon, we'll put sometimes graffiti on it. If you look at Peninsula Corridor, the wagons that come with that, two-bay hoppers, open two-bay hoppers, they've got different bits of graffiti on them. Let's dial back the dynamic brakes a little bit. Try and find the sweet spot again now we've increased the air brakes. It's better. Likewise, to be honest, Chief Engineer, it's not something we're a huge fan of doing, but we put it in some places. In some cases, operators have specifically forbid it. They spend an enormous amount of money and time clearing it up, and they certainly don't approve of seeing it in the game. Around 30 some odd thousand pounds of force seems to be around about what's balancing us now. Maybe so, Chief, but I mean, if the operators are forbid it, then that ends the discussion. And essentially what we do when we're looking at whether or not graffiti goes on is like how much of an intrinsic part of the experience is that graffiti. It's just like if it's kind of really important to actually capturing the feel of the area, then we'll look at putting it in. But if it's just detail for detail's sake, then we won't. And it's rare that graffiti goes on trains. We did it on the two-bay hoppers because I think you pretty much can't find a two-bay hopper in California that doesn't have graffiti on it. So again, it was kind of like it would be almost wrong to not have it on there. But by default, we don't do that. A CSX timetable on Clinchfield, yeah, that would be quite fun. Be like a Diesel Legends thing, wouldn't it? Get some CSX locos and modern freight cars. Yeah, indeed. Graffiti is damage to private property, totally. And trespass and all of the usual things. This is the Borry cut-off. Means we're not too far from from Cheyenne now. Blackpool tram route. You wouldn't necessarily need licensing for the tower. You would need it from the operators of the Blackpool tramway themselves, of course. Well, that's the challenge with graffiti. You can't copy graffiti because graffiti, whether or not you like it or think it's appropriate or if it's trespass or damage to property, the actual graffiti itself is someone's copyrighted artwork. And you can't copy it. I mean, you can clean it off because it shouldn't be there, but you can't copy it. So, so when we do graffiti, we have to make up our own. Nothing to report on BNSF, Richard. Up, the grade's easing up. The grade's easing up. Now, bearing in mind, we were holding the train entirely on dynamics at 0.8%. What I'd be tempted to do is, if there is a 0.8, if it drops to 0.8%, would be to slow down to like 15, and then kill the air brakes entirely. Unless you paid for the artist, yeah. I mean, if you get a license, then you know it's fine. No, I can't do art, Chief Engineer. I can't do art. Stickmen is the extent of my artwork. You know those big images you see on people's fridges with the artwork from the kids that have got like a house and a couple of stickmen and it says "My Family." I can't even do that to any level of accuracy, to be honest. This is why I do coding instead. That side of my brain doesn't work. Fortunately, it doesn't have to. Hey there, Amtrak fan, how's it going? Gradient went back up to 1.5%, so it's fine. Keep managing it. Is rail driver support not in for the 166 and HST? If not, it's something that will be coming. I think internally the entire collection has now been upgraded, so it's just waiting for all the updates to come out. Yeah, and I used to do C++ when I was at British Telecom, and then I went into Java for a good few years. Predominantly I just do C# now because it's the right and true language that the world should be using. I don't actually get a lot of opportunity to do coding these days, but I do enjoy it. Managing speed now, £25,000 seems to be about the right level for holding it with this combination of brakes. Yeah, I'm the same actually, Calador. When I'm doing software engineering, I do visualize everything. You know, I visualize the engineering model and so forth that I'm creating, and then I create that into the code. I've always been said by people that it's been one of my strengths as a coder in the past. But no, I can't do the arty drawing. No, not at all. I have a lot of respect for people that do that. Well, it depends what you're doing, doesn't it, Jan? Almost everything I do is business level coding, and C++ is just ridiculously complicated and over the top for anything business level. C# is perfectly fine for that. If you're doing game coding, you're doing something that requires performance optimal stuff, then yeah, absolutely you'd use C++. C# is not built for performance. But almost every bit of coding I ever do doesn't need that performance. What it needs is much better maintainability, development, structure, and all the nice advantages of C#. But no, I can't freaking stand C++. Coded in it for many, many years, and hate it with a passion, frankly. The old train. Good, it's slowing down. Sneaks up to 29, you're like, no! Well, someone said, I think Chris wanted a run by, so I thought, let's have a run by. So let me get a sandwich, or 3. Oh, we're definitely going to talk to Jimmy about seeing what else we can do now, potentially in terms of upgrading all of the horns and going forwards and so forth. It's been great working with Jimmy, Jim Milliskite, and we'll see what happens going forward. They're too slow now, it's dial back and dynamics. The gradient's dropped to 1%, or increased, come back to 1%, so that's why we're slowing down. Robert, I'm on my home computer. This is it's a 2080 Super, but it's throttled badly by my old i7 6th generation CPU. The SD40 I think has got a K3 LA, and I'm not sure, I think the other SD40, the CS6 one's a K5 LA, so again it needs a different horn to the one that's in this SD40. And so people are saying, what, no AC4400? Well look, what we've got at the back. Speeding up slowly. Well, we've only got one Union Pacific AC4400 in the game, it's Cane Creek. You can't drive with it, but it will substitute as a secondary loco. Yeah, my work PC is a 3070, yeah. 5.5 miles to Cheyenne. Going past Wycon now. It probably does, Ed, because I'm probably going to get that done on Monday, because I'm probably at home now for the next 2 weeks. Richards, the SD40-2 has a K3 LA horn, if I remember rightly, whereas the CSX SD40 has a K5 LA horn. So you couldn't just use this horn on that SD40, that'd be wrong too. But we are going to see if we can't get some more horns done. It's all time and everything. Yeah, it's 200% screen size, Jan, but the problem is not GPU. This GPU can stomp all over everything. The problem is the processor. I did try dialing it back to 100% earlier on, and it made 0 difference to frame rate. It's because the CPU is probably not up to the physics that's going on. Speed's coming back up a bit now. So we'll put the dynamic brakes back up a little bit. I'm using the GPU for streaming as well due to fire. It's using NVENC encoding, because you really need to use NVENC encoding with XSplit, because it's built in H.264 is garbage compared to OBS. Robert, did I upgrade the work one myself? No, that's a brand new PC, my 3070 the work one. It's got a Ryzen 5 5600 I think in it, 32 gigs of RAM, 3070 GPU, runs a tree. It's awesome. I've got my laptop here as well, which has got a better CPU. It's got an i7 9th generation, but it's also got 2 cups of coffee poured into it, so I don't really trust it for streaming. It's fine for work stuff now, but I don't trust it for streaming. Seems to be holding around the 26 mile per hour mark as we roll into Cheyenne. Honestly, I don't actually know, Robert. The IT people gave it to me. I think they buy part built PCs and then upgrade them, because they're bulk buying in GPUs whenever they can, because obviously they're hard to find, and so I think they part buy stuff and then they upgrade them with extra bits and pieces. What I haven't done is dialed the foliage down, actually. I might try dialing the foliage down, maybe that'll help. But like I said, I'm not GPU bound. GPU is bored. It's my processor that's going, wait, catch up, wait. Yeah, it's live build. It's actually the shipping build. No stat unit graph, no. But I could tell you it's going to be the game thread. The CPU is crying at the moment. The GPU is not. GPU is sitting around 40-50%. CPU 80-90%. Could be the draw thread, eh? Oh. 3.3 miles to our stopping location, so we'll be entering the vicinity of Cheyenne momentarily. No, Benny Plant, we don't actually have a DPU simulation at all. We're using a fake thing called banking com, which you use the push to talk button to toggle on and off, because we don't have a proper DPU simulation at all. It's something we want to add in at some point. Yeah, but haven't you got a 5950 or something, Jan? There is a limit to the number of cores that Unreal can access sensibly, and I think we topped out at 8 cores or something like that. Which means that things like a 5950, which have got like 32 cores, I don't think we're ever going to get full use out of. Yeah, what CPU have you got, Callum? There we go, down to 0.8% now. Well, let me try knocking the... Oh no, it's the end of the journey now, but let's have a look at the foliage quality down to medium. And see if that helps. No, hasn't made any difference at all. You've got Xeon. Oh, nice colour. No, not for a long time, Ed. And that was on TSW 2020. I've never customised the TSW2 build. Right, I'm going to crank up the dynamics a bit and slow down. I want to get these air brakes off. Actually, no, I don't. I'm thinking about it. There's nothing that will help with the driving quality, Moggy. You know that. No worries, Spider Kid. Glad you found it useful. Right, that's brought the speed down a bit. We'll be snopping in just under 2 miles. Now, if there's one thing I learned from yesterday, Ed, is I do not want you anywhere near me when I'm driving a train. We were playing another game yesterday, and Ed was driving up behind us and kept knocking all of our cars off the track. It was being gentle. Yeah. No, Xeon's not the greatest for gaming. It's meant for business and service and the like. Still decent CPU though. When I was at BT, I had a Deck Alpha as my desktop computer. Oh dear. Back in the days, eh? Fantastic machine. Brilliantly powerful. Not necessarily the most practical desktop PC. Hey, Jay McMillan, how's it going? $190, wow. Well, that's one of the exits into Cheyenne Yard over there on the right. $12 miles per hour, 1.5 miles to go. We're stopping in a minute, Alexander. There's one thing that you learn very quickly: these trains don't stop quickly, so I'm coming in slow so that we stop properly. Yeah, still going, Bob. Still going. What I'm going to do after this is I'm going to stop the stream, sort out dinner for everybody, and then once I've had dinner and a break, then I'm going to come back on and we'll go the other way. If anyone's around. J McMillan, this is Laramie Yard, Cheyenne Yard. Must be what, 7:20, 7:30 or something service. Cry for my sleep schedule. Hey, I'm playing the game, having fun. Just about a mile to go. Yeah, we've got a grain train. We started at Laramie and it's a straight through run, Laramie to Cheyenne. You want a burger and chips? You want burger on one chip? Burger on one chip, Sonny Scott. I'm actually with you on that. Chips just corrupt the burger. Unless you're going to put the chips in the burger, that's interesting. Want to create an Italian route? What will be the biggest challenge? There are a number of challenges with any route that's not UK, US, Germany. We need to become, our team needs to be as much of an expert at it as you have spent your entire life getting, and we need to do it fairly quickly. B, we need to build all new scenery. We need to build all the new track infrastructure and signals. We need to learn how the signals work, learn how cab and train operations work. Need to get access to licenses, get access to trains, get access to getting the recordings for the audio. Some of these are existing problems regardless of what route you do, but they're more difficult because they're in new territories that we're not familiar with. We need to build up expertise on the beta forum. That shouldn't be too difficult, but it's a thing to be done. Our internal test team need to get some familiarity with it. And then, having done it once, you then want to be doing it more than once. And then if you spend time building a new territories routes like Italian, then you're potentially not building routes for existing territories that are all going, wait, why has it been a year since the last UK route, or so on and so forth. So now we are scaling up the teams to get more teams, but a wide range of issues, and that's why we kind of focus on UK, US and Germany, with sort of an intention that, hey, historically, where it's usually worked best is when third-party developers come along who are already experts in those territories, come along and we help them create routes in those territories. Right, let's kill the dynamic brake. Don't need it. Right. I'm going to get the brakes off because it'll take a minute for them to come off. Probably should have done that before now, but the problem is that how I then stop the train, I want as many wagons to be up to 90 psi as possible before I stop it, so that they'll help me stop the train, because the whole train won't be at 90 psi by the time I need to stop the train. There's already been one performance improvement shipped to the Steam side, Bob. and there's another one or two being worked on related to grass and related to some inefficient assets we found at Laramie and Cheyenne. So yeah, there's stuff being worked on. Like I said, one of Steam has already got an improvement, but there's more to come. I'm not the creator of the game. I'm the exec producer of the team that makes the game, Jamie McMillan. But other people more talented than I actually make the game. I just make the tea, basically. It does seem to be a little close to the light, doesn't it? Then all of those, I did ask the team to dial the stops back from the lights, but so I'm going to bail off the loco brakes, and then I can apply a bit of power and pull up to the stop while the rest of the train has got its brakes on. That is way too close to the signal. Oh my word. There you go. All done. Nicely held, I think. Did all right. As you can see where it's a slog up the hill, and then back off the power, ready for the speed drop at the junction, and then it's maintaining it. You can see where it got a bit too fast here. Applied the air brakes, and then it was managing the air brakes as we came down into Cheyenne. So it's a long run, but it's this bit here going towards Cheyenne, which is the real challenge there. So the key things there are to, when you apply your auto brakes, bail off the loco brakes, so that your dynamics will continue to work. Make sure that you don't go above about 30 miles an hour, because go above about 30 miles an hour, your dynamics become less efficient, and that may not be what you're expecting. And just keep control of it. You need to be thinking ahead of the train. If you let the train get ahead of you, you've got a problem. The other thing is, when you get started, make sure that you are not you're not relying on air brakes before they're fully charged. So if you get started at 75 psi, you need to acknowledge with yourself that you have no brakes on the rear of the train. And probably throughout, half the train, there's no brakes available. Even though it's releasing the brakes, doesn't mean it can reapply them. So make sure that, so for a run like this, when we got started, we didn't actually hit 80, 90 psi until about here. So give yourself a bit more time. Start, and if you're going to start in the middle of the route at Hermosa, then you're going to need brakes fairly early on in the run. I wouldn't get moving until you're at 85, 90 psi, so that you've got brakes available to you. A minimum set held us almost all the way down, except for when I let the dynamic brakes get a bit too, the speed get too fast, and the dynamic brakes became less effective. And then I just pumped a little bit more on it, and then continued managing it with the dynamics. So you don't need tons of air brakes to get this to go down, to get this to work. You just need to manage it properly. Okay, folks, I'm going to have a dinner break, and I will come back later on, and we will do a run the other direction. If there's a particular train you want to see, send me a message on the forums or something. But otherwise than that, what time is it now? It is 6:04, so 8 o'clock, so 2 hours. Okay, thank you very much. I will catch you all later. Cheers, bye.